Hello, and welcome to our session titled Making UDL Connections to Empower Educators. We are presenting today on behalf of the Special Education Technology Center in Washington State at Central Washington University, and we're proud to be presenting and participating in the virtual portion of ATIA 2022 conference. I'm Kristen Leslie. I'm an occupational therapist and an assistive technology specialist, and currently the director of the Special Education Technology Center.
And my name is Rose Roscoe. I'm also an occupational therapist and assistive technology specialist, and I work part-time for the Special Ed Technology Center and also have time for the Bellevue School District as an assistive technology coordinator.
And my name is Linda Daly. I am an AT specialist with the Special Education Technology Center. My background is in computer programming, but I have enjoyed bringing that skill to assistive technology.
As you can see on this slide, we have a Google folder where you'll find all the handouts and some resources. And so you can click on that link, or I'm going to go ahead and read the URL.
I will bring that back up.
Sorry. Okay, maybe they can see it as we read it. So it's tinyurl.com/SETC-UDL-ATIA 2022.
And I'll show you what is in that folder. So you will have the presentation. You will have some slides that we will show you later in the presentation. And then some of the other documents we will show you. You will find those in this folder.
So in addition to the Google folder, we have a Padlet link, and we will be using this Padlet throughout the presentation, where you can respond to some reflection questions if this is your preferred method of expression. There's also a place where you can add your own questions and some resources there as well. So you can click on that Padlet link or go to padlet.com/KR-Leslie/ATIA 2022 UDL Connections.
And this is what you will find at that Padlet. So you will again find our presentation. You will find the reflection questions that you can all add to. And then you'll be able to see other people's thoughts also, and we'll be able to see your questions.
And we're hoping this is an asynchronous way that we can connect with you, even though this is a pre-recorded session. So please feel free to add your comments at any time when you're doing this presentation, and we will be checking the question area too. So if you have questions, let us know and we'll try to connect back with you.
And to see the questions, you'll see if you slide the bar to the right, there are more columns. So
just a little background on the Special Education Technology Center. We're the longest running state needs project in Washington State, and we're an organization that provides assistive technology and AAC support to Washington State teachers, specialists, families, paraeducators, and administrators. We also have Washington State, Washington Assistive Technology Project that's at the University of Washington. We have the following services. We provide consultation around assistive technology and AAC, and we have a lending library for Washington State, and we have professional development, including conferences, classes, and webinars that are open to all. All right, so at the end of this session, we're hoping that a few things occur, that you identify at least one professional development strategy to support educators with UDL implementation in your own states or agencies. We would love for you to target 2 innovative ideas to share with your districts or your agencies around supporting UDL implementation. And we're hoping that you connect and collaborate to build networks to support implementation of UDL. We wish we could be live and interacting with you in person, but we're hoping to have a follow-up meeting that we'll talk about towards the end of the presentation where we could get together and have a discussion. But again, that Padlet's a place where you can see each other's feedback and start to build some collaboration there. All right, so ATIA has a session feedback evaluation, and you access that through the ATIA mobile app. All right, this quote comes from a book that I read in the last few years called Listening Leader, Creating Conditions for Equitable Transformation in Schools. And it's by Shane Saphir. And she's also come up with another book called Street Data, also very helpful. But school transformation arises from micro interactions of each day. So this quote highlights how our interactions each day are small interactions, whether that's through teachers, with students, parents, administrators, they really matter. And they're opportunities to plant some positive seeds and the beginnings of ideas. And it's an opportunity to build trust, build relationships so that there can be real and vulnerable conversations that end up sparking some innovative ideas and change in real ways. And sometimes these type of interactions can go beyond those formal initiatives because they're personal and people are talking about things that matter to them daily. So as a state leader, you might have some big ideas, or as a district leader, big ideas around UDL and making change. But remember that those relationships are so foundational to making change. And so we'll be sharing some ways in which we've collaborated with others and things that we've offered to move UDL forward, but know that those things were born out of a lot of interactions with people throughout the state. And these Karens, these rocks, represent that our journeys are all different. So we're moving in the same direction. We want to see UDL implemented, but UDL is first and foremost a framework, right, that provides lots of options. And so we also have options in how we implement. So you might hear some ideas today that you want to try and share with others, and that'll spark new ideas. And the ideas from us might then look different for you. But this journey, whether it's in your classroom, whether it's in your school or your state, has its own uniqueness in how we implement UDL. All right, so the agenda today is that we're going to next look at some SETC resources on UDL. We're going to talk about our professional development in our state, look at examples of UDL in the field, and we're going to have some reflection time and looking at some goal settings going forward for SETC and share some of ours. And then we'll have final questions and answers will be through the Padlet, but our contact information is there. So if as you're going through this presentation, you have thoughts or questions, feel free to email us also.
I would like you to pause for a moment and just reflect on this question. What ideas do you have to help educators make UDL connections? We're going to discuss a lot of our ideas, but we want you to think about what are you already doing, or what's some ideas that you have that you can share with all of us through the Padlet. So we're going to pause for just a moment. We encourage you to pause the recording, and after you've thought about this, go into the shared Padlet. Okay, now that you've had a time to reflect on what you're doing, we're going to share a little bit about some ideas that SETC has on answering that same question. So what we did originally when we were going to be live, we created this Menti, and we don't know if you've gone here before, but if you want to participate asynchronously, you can click on the link we provided here, menti.com, and the code, or you can scan the URL code, and you will come up with a page where you're invited to type your own options in, and they will populate into the word cloud. So this is an example of what the word cloud would look like after we kind of pre-populated it for you, so you could see a vision of it. But it's just another engaging way, again, when you're doing presentations or working in the classroom, to kind of engage participants. So just take a moment again, if you want to click into Menti. You can pause the video and then let us know what you think right there. So whatever you've done. And then just wanted to introduce this as a tool that you can use in the future as well. All right, so now we're going to take you to a UDL website page that we created. We started a website resource right when COVID began in March of 2020, and it's been growing. And so this fall, we've added this UDL webpage, and Linda is going to take us there for just a moment. And we actually created it for the purpose of housing resources that we were using in a UDL Professional Learning Community series that we were doing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. So what we did here is we organized it into 4 major areas, and we came up with these areas by interviewing our participants to see what they most wanted to talk about for UDL. So there's always some people that need to start at the beginning. So Linda, can you click into UDL Principles 101? And what we did here is at the top, we always gave some options for resources, and we organized it by watch a video, read an article, or review a book excerpt. So those kind of choices, those UDL choices were built in for the participants who wanted to learn. And then as you go down further, I put more resources in that same format under the 3 principles of engagement, representation, action, and expression. So whatever their media or mode is, they like to learn. There's lots of choices there to explore and learn a little bit about UDL basics. So can you go back to the main page? Yeah, and then just showing the other areas, UDL and inclusive ed is this section, UDL implementation, and the 4th area is UDL tech tools. And we won't go into those, but if you do click into that and you have the link available, you will see they're organized along the same way, that for each of those areas, I have kind of a subsections that you can watch a video about it, read about it, explore something about it in those ways. So yeah, and then the tech tools also include some accessibility features that are on another part of our website. So you can just see what that looks like briefly, but we wanted to share that resource with you because this is something you could easily share the link out with other districts, classrooms, schools, teachers, and they could be exploring and learning about UDL. And it's a great way to have a page to kind of launch some professional learning. Thanks.
All right, so in this next section, we are going to share with you some of the special ed tech centers professional development that we have shared with our state, and then you will get some ideas for what we have done. But before we do that, we again want to give you a chance to just reflect and think about what methods of professional development are you using in your state or district. And so again, you have the 3 options for responding, and we are hoping you'll share in the Padlet, but you do what is most comfortable for you.
So now that you've had some time to think about professional development in your own state or district, we want to share some ways in which we provide professional development in our state. So we have an annual conference that has been in person, but has been remote for the last few years. And we have regional and statewide AT meetings. Twice a year, we meet statewide with AT specialists and educators, and then regionally, some of those groups meet. We have classes that are both live and on demand. Our webinars that are usually Monday through Thursday are free to educators throughout the state and beyond. And then we record those webinars or do a recap of them and share on our YouTube channel so that there's some on-demand access. Have customized UDL trainings and done some coaching in districts where we come alongside the team and really we're a part of that group and together going on a journey for learning about UDL. We have had Universal Design for Learning professional learning communities in which people gather over time throughout the year to then progress together in their learning, but then also direct it. We have TChatters, and that's a time where folks come together over a specific topic and share out what they're doing in different districts so that we're learning from others. We have Tuesday tips, which go out on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page that are 2 to 3 minute clips on different aspects of assistive technology. We have technical collaborations within schools, and that's where we're meeting with a team over time regarding a specific student or classroom. So these are the ways that we interact with people in the state through professional development. All right, so we also collaborate with state partners. And so I'm sure you all have partners you collaborate with within your district or statewide. But mainly I want to talk about the importance of collaboration, that through our professional development, we can provide some technical support and some adaptive change over time as we have those conversations. But also as a state wanting some coordinated efforts, it's important to then have those collaborators for that deeper change. What I feel is most important is on the next slide. And so I wanted you to take just a moment to think about what has made collaboration meaningful and impactful to you within your agencies. So I wanted to share a little bit about what we have found has made collaboration meaningful and impactful. And that is taking the time to build relationships with those partners and ongoing dialogue over time. When you have those dialogues, really being active and listening. So I would say in past years, we might have come to those collaborations with an agenda. We have these skill set, you have those, you do this, we do this, and now we've got this product. And we're not looking at it that way as much. We're looking at really listening to the partners. What are their priorities and their needs? And then thinking about how we can collaborate in a joint way then over time. Also, allowing ideas to ripen with each other. And so you've probably had an experience where you share an idea with a friend or a colleague, and they're not quite getting on board or connecting with it. And then you might mention something about it a little bit later, and then you get together the next time, and all of a sudden they're the ones bringing up this idea with their own thoughts along with it. That's called ripening. And so while folks that you share about UDL with may not be ready for some ideas right off the bat, when you interact with them over time, the ideas begin to ripen and become their own. And we felt that that's very important. Really, the spirit in which you show up to collaborate over time with partners is so important. And just the willingness to collaborate. Neuroscientists know the importance of collaboration because research shows that certain parts of our brains are activated, and that's called the social brain. And in that experience, we are making sense of what others' perspectives are and ideas and integrating it with our own. And when that happens, innovative, creative ideas come to be because there's divergent thinking. There's thinking in ways that are outside that prescriptive expectation or what we've always done. So just want to encourage collaboration with others as you are implementing UDL.
Can I just share a brief example of that? I just wanted to say, this is kind of spontaneous, but last week I helped host an ATIA, one of our interactive webinars on ATIA accommodations for state testing. And we have established a really good relationship with two of our state leaders on the directors of assessment and state testing and from OSPI. And they've come to our last 2 or 3 trainings, and we're both there last week, able to answer questions on demand, able to participate in our discussion, contribute to the information we are sharing. And it was really powerful. So that's just one example of exactly what Kristen was talking about, a relationship ripening over time and being able to have a long-term partner that's been really effective.
That was a great example of that. The next piece of professional development we wanted to share with you, Kristen had mentioned that we do AT statewide meetings. And these, she explained the structure that twice a year we get together. They actually grew out of a total grassroots effort. We had meetings around the state in different regions that would come together twice a year, 3 times a year. And as we started learning about each other's meetings, people started to attend other areas' meetings. And we thought a couple of people on one area of the state said, what if we got together and had a meeting of all these different regional meetings? And we had 9 or 10 different groups, and it started in 2016. We used to meet, it was new then to try to do a Google Hangout and bring all these groups together, but it worked great. And each region would take a time to put the agenda together and really do the bulk of the organization. And we've rotated that between different regions. We have speakers who come in and talk about a variety of topics, from testing to what's new in AT to what's your favorite app. We do small group breakouts. And one of the fun things we've started to do now is we do an Ed Camp unconference where people can go into breakout rooms based on topics. And then we have lots of UDL options to engage and learn within that process. And we've actually developed a shared document that we share these with. I'm just going to show you an example of one of our, whoops, that's not it. Here's the example of the shared Google Doc of different topics, and you can click on them and people have shared their resources. And this is within the state, we've all shared. And then I'll show you one of our Ed Camps and how it looks. So this is just a half-hour session where we had different topics, and you could go into different breakout rooms and then discuss within those breakout rooms. People could just have open discussion and share resources and ideas and questions. So that's just, the statewide meetings have become just a favorite day for a lot of people around the state to really connect and just share information amongst themselves.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, noticing a lot of increased engagement with that EdCamp format, where people could really actively participate and connect across the state and across districts. It's been very powerful. All right, another thing we started this last year, and we started our first UDL Professional Learning Community started last kind of winter, spring, and we decided we would try to build our own professional learning community with anyone who wanted to join across the state. So we had 5 sessions that we pre-planned, and Kristen and I had this idea, and instead of us being leading it in any way, we would set it up. We're kind of like the educational experience designers. We would provide them resources and give them time to explore resources and break out and share in these small groups. So this kind of different format really was trying to move towards more transformational learning, where instead of the traditional set and get, we're really trying hard at SETC to facilitate opportunities for people to connect, reflect, share, discern how they're going to use things, and really engage in a bigger way during professional development. Lots of great idea sharing going on. Also asking for a lot of learner feedback, with learners leading the way. We did a lot of surveys, Google surveys, to get input from them all along the development and between sessions, even as each session grew. The other thing that happened, we decided to do it repeated again this fall, and we're still in another active session of, I think we've gone through 3 sessions so far of the 5 for this school year, but we redesigned it and actually improved our resource page. And that's where we birthed this UDL resource page that I shared earlier, to kind of house all the resources in one easy access place that could not only be used for that class, but it can be shared out with others and maybe continued with other PLCs. So a lot of cool stuff. We're going to just give you a quick peek at what kind of resources we provided in the participant folder. We made a participant folder, and could you just click on that top folder there, UDL PLC topic folders? Yes. And what we did is for each of the 4 areas, and you saw those same 4 areas on the UDL web pages I made, we initiated a topic and then click into UDL basics. And then we had a Google form that just gave the links and what we wanted them to do. So like, if you went into that room, here's your guideline form. So we just provided them a resource to guide their discussion, how long the breakout room would be, and here's directly links they could watch or discuss, questions, place to take notes. So really just giving them an outline. You have a choice where you go, and then here's your resource you can use however you want for your small group. So yeah, and then we just made it an agenda for each time. So we would kick off and guide the hour, but we tried to go all the time for 25 minutes for breakout sessions so that they could really dig into their small groups and have that interaction. But we did find that the mix of people, even though the same people sign up for all 5 sessions, who actually came ended up being a little bit varied. So instead of having the same group of people every time, we let them choose whatever topic they wanted. And then they would talk with other people that were also interested in that topic. So that's how it was kind of led.
So Kristen also mentioned the ATIA example, and that also came out of those statewide meetings that we first started hosting. What we found was different groups of people would want to extend that conversation. So we said, why don't we set up times to just have a chance where people can meet together virtually and just talk about a specific topic. And so we could provide the questions and the conversation starters, but really the participants just lead the discussion and direct their own learning. And so I'm just going to go ahead and show you an example of one of the documents that we had. And that's just for one of these ATIA. So this was one on executive functioning supports. We always have a facilitator, usually 2 people, because it's helpful to have somebody monitoring the chat, both people keeping the conversation going, but not leading the conversation, other than we do give questions. But what happens sometimes is these questions are just jump off points, and people can talk about anything they want within this topic. And so we give them the starters, and then we have a note taker who just keeps notes so that this document people can go back to and refer to what we spoke on. But it's just a chance for people to get together and discuss any topic they want to in more detail. And it's actually grown now where we do this several times a year, and we'll often do these just because we'll have a group of people who start talking about something. Like we had people who were asking about math supports one time, and it started to be a conversation here, a conversation there. We said, let's get together in ATIA so that all the stakeholders can talk. What has been fun with this too is it started with just our state, but now we've actually had people from across the country join us. And it's interesting to get the different perspectives on how people do things from across the country. Now that we have shared some things, we just want to give you another chance to reflect. What types of opportunities might you provide to engage all of your learners?
So now we'd like to share some UDL examples from the field. SETC works across the state, across Washington State, in both urban and rural districts. And so we're going to share some concrete examples of UDL tools and the strategies we've used and the environments that we've come across in our work. So we do collaborate at the district level, building level, with classrooms, with teachers, around students. And just thinking back on earlier in this presentation when we talked about collaboration. So I wanted to read a quote from a book I'm reading right now called Leadership on the Line. And it says this: start where people are. Beyond the capacity to listen, this requires curiosity, especially when you think you already know someone's problem and what needs to be done. Their view is likely to be different from yours. And if you don't take their perspective as a starting point, you are liable to be dismissed as irrelevant, insensitive, or even presumptuous. So really important to start where folks are at and start with that listening, and then join in as a support. So one example that Linda and I have is from Richland School District, where we were asked to come and present to educators on UDL. And we arrived and found that our audience was different than we expected. And so we, instead of powering through the presentation we had a lot of adapting to do. And so we needed to know this audience, get to know them, and we needed to do a lot of listening and letting them do some of the leading even. So in the morning we had administrators. In the afternoon, we had some educators that needed rubber meets the road. And through that, we really needed to be considering them.
the homegrown solutions are more likely to take root. So that's why we thought it was so important to just switch gears and go with what they were asking once we got there.
Right, because then we're talking about things that are meaningful and important to them in the moment, and then building solutions from there.
So then another example that actually Kristen and I both worked with this one too was we have a rural district in Eastern Washington that has, they had a middle school teacher who was doing her principal internship, and Kristen and I met her along with a teacher at one of our local universities, a professor, and she decided to do a UDL PLC for her principal internship project. And so it was presented to the staff, and she really thought only certain staff would want to take part in this, and was pleasantly surprised that the entire middle school wanted to take part in this. And so for a year, we met with them once a month, and the local professor and I met locally, and Kristen joined in virtually. And they did this process, and this was some of their insights from beginning to end. You know, one of the teachers said, I thought it would be chaos, but instead the students were just really engaged. And another teacher said, UDL doesn't seem to consider students' weaknesses, and it assumes a certain level of maturity. But then another teacher said, students are moving more and thinking more for themselves. And I was afraid the students would be all over the place, but even the kids who typically struggle with behaviors were on task. And so before this presentation, I thought, you know what, I want to reach out and find out if, so, you know, several years later, how has this still impacted you? And one of the teachers said that the follow-up was, going forward, I am more aware of teaching in ways that support multiple intelligences. I worked on my master's after that year, which focused on arts integration in the classroom, of which UDL is a large part as well. The introduction that I received that year and the work that we did as a class allowed me to share with my cohort about UDL and its benefits. And the principal intern has gone on to be a principal and also share her experiences with her new schools. So that was an example where we supported a local school at that, just, you know, at the school level, and that PLC has gone on to help them years later. They've still benefited from what they've learned during that year.
So I'm going to share a classroom level example of UDL in action. I work for the Bellevue School District, and I have collaborated with a high school teacher named Molly Parker, and she put together this slide, and there's a quick video of her, and she discusses how she collaborates with other 11th and 12th grade English teachers, so general ed, and she's a special ed teacher, and they co-plan lessons offering UDL options for reading novels. So you can see some of the options there, but I'm gonna let you listen to her talk about how she does this. So here is Molly Parker here.
Hi, my name is Molly Parker, and I'm a special education teacher at Newport High School in the Bellevue School District. For about the past 5 years, I've been co-teaching American Literature and Composition, which is a general education English class. My role is to support students with IEPs in accessing their general education English classes. Over the years, my role has also kind of shifted to supporting all students in these classes. So what I'm going to be sharing here today is some strategies we used in the Great Gatsby unit for American Literature to support not only students with IEPs, but any students that were struggling to navigate Fitzgerald's text. So to provide some options with how students accessed the Great Gatsby and the storyline, all students were given the actual physical book. They picked this up from material pickup. They were also given a PDF version of the text, so they could choose right through their OneNote to have an audio version accessible. We also paired a YouTube video audio of each chapter in case students felt that the immersive reader was a bit too monotone. So each and every student in our co-taught and across junior English had access to audio versions of The Great Gatsby. Because our main focus this year with The Great Gatsby was on plot, we wanted to provide a lot of different options for supporting students in understanding the plot when Fitzgerald uses a lot of literary devices, which can sometimes make it tough for students with reading goals or MLL students to navigate what's actually going on with the plot. So to kind of provide more choice and supports, we passed out to all students a graphic novel version of the text. So students were able to actually pick up a physical copy, but I also used Office Lens to upload it online. So students that weren't able to get a physical copy had access to it on the computer as well. So what's really cool about this graphic novel is it actually takes specific quotes and language from The Great Gatsby and pairs it with pictures. So this has been a really cool strategy in supporting students in understanding the plot. For students that are either beginner MLLs or have reading goals in their IEP, we have a level down version that we gave to select students. And here you'll see that the reading level is pared down quite a bit. It's supported with also pictures. And so select students were also provided with this level down version. And what's cool is regardless of which version of the text students read, they were able to participate in the ongoing assessment of the unit, which was preparing literature circle notes, where they either form connections, discuss questions, or identify specific passages. So they were able to work through that written assignment and share with their classmates.
So just in wrapping that up, I just wanted you to see an example of that wonderful collaboration between gen ed and special ed and all the great options they were showing. So we'll move on to a few other examples here. This is from a teacher UDL professional development training that I worked with the staff in putting together. So it turned out at first they wanted my partner and I to come in and do the training, but as it turned out, they ended up leading the way. There was a kind of a technology specialist and an English language learner specialist teacher, and they led the way and they set up the day. And my friend and I, my colleague and I actually did one of the sessions. So they even created this UDL menu, which I love because it gives the teachers who are there a choice. Where do they want to go explore? What do they want to learn about today? And we had each of the stations set up in one school. It was set up in different classrooms. And I'm going to show you an example that we did. This one was at an elementary. And then the other one was actually different stations around the room with space between stations. So it was great as we had them kind of do a little pre-focus, kind of like we've done with you today. What do they want to focus on learning today? And then they were able to choose several stations, rotating, like I think we did like 30-minute rotations or 20-minute rotations. And then kind of at the end, wrapping up with what do they want to remember? What did they learn? And Linda, could you scroll to page 2? There's actually a second. So on the back side of that same sheet, as they were going through stations, we gave them a place where they could just jot down a quick note about a strategy or tool they learned about that they wanted to go implement. And that was really impactful because after the training, then we would get phone calls of like, oh, now I really want to implement this tool. Can you come back and give me some more support and training on it? Or I want to set up account for this tool. So that was really awesome. And then on the next slide, so when you close out, Linda, going back to the slideshow. So this was an elementary level one we did, and then we also did middle school here. And that one, we just arranged a little differently. There were 3 staff at the middle school plus myself, and we just had 4 rotation options in one big giant library. And then we just made sure we had all 3 UDL principals represented there. But we kind of did the same thing, and that full version, which is also available to you in our resource folder, again, has that same format of starting with pre-thinking and then going to rotation stations, making notes, and then kind of a post-reflection at the end. And I think both sessions were about an hour and a half total. So that was kind of a really fun strategy, having a UDL learning menu for the teachers to use as they directed their own learning. So finale for today, as far as a UDL example, we talked to you about our UDL Professional Learning Community and that we also do book studies. So we've had a frequent flyer, a gal from Lake Chelan School District that was coming to an awful lot of our UDL sessions. And as we started to talk, we realized they had a lot going on in their district. And so we kind of said, they invited us to come and present at this professional learning day that they had that was an all-day event. It was just at the beginning of January of 2022. And when we interviewed her and the team, they've actually had a full year-long UDL initiative, and they've hired Katie Novak to come and be a facilitator, and they did all this work on this. So I just kind of gave some background on the slide for you on how they set that up. They were really cognizant about, again, surveying the teachers, getting feedback on what the teachers needed, what was their understanding of UDL. And then I just want to pop open the slides because her name is Sarah, and Sarah put together just 7 slides quickly summarizing this professional learning day and how they put it together. And it was really interesting. They kind of had this buildup, right? It wasn't just a one-shot deal. They started the previous August on this UDL initiative, and they had Katie Novak come in person. And then in the January day, Katie came back virtually just to pop in, do some, a focused presentation, and then she helped facilitate groups. She helped provide options. She gave examples, and then we did this wonderful PD. So scroll a few more. I just want to kind of show a little bit of the survey results. So teachers really wanted to hear from other teachers about firsthand experience with UDL, see examples. They wanted tools, materials, and resources. So basically from these findings, they put together this really awesome conference menu, kind of like we're experiencing here at ATIA, but this is in one school district. So they were, and in their menu, they were trying to model UDL during that whole professional learning day. So keep scrolling. So just right here on this other, right there on that slide, on Melissa Toland. So the other thing I was impressed with when I dug deeper is that they didn't just put together a PD day. They studied the work of someone who does a really great job at this and said, we want to model our professional learning day off the principles that we learned from her. So if you want to explore, there's a link to the resources of Melissa Toland, but you can see a screenshot of how they actually plan their day according to these different areas of UDL that they learned about. And then as a result, you can see on the next slide, they made sure there was PLC time. So this was an in-person training for the most part, minus Katie Novak was virtual, and then our SETC team presenters were virtual. But between presentations, they met as a PLC, and that PLC stayed consistent throughout the day. They had choice sessions all afternoon, I think at least 3 or 4 choice sessions. And at the end of every one, they paused and thought, do one thing. What is the one thing you want to remember that I want to take out of that training and do tomorrow? So those were kind of the 3 principles they learned. And we saw that very clearly. Linda and I were invited to attend all day as well as present a session or 2. And lastly, I just wanted to show that they had this wonderful live agenda where you could see the agenda for the day with linking to all the resources needed. And finally, you can see this choice board, which again, another wonderful way to provide different slots in different rooms where they could choose where they wanted to learn. And then some were virtual and some were in person. I'd say most of the sessions were in person, but it was wonderful. And I think SETC presented 3 different sessions, and the team was really good about going back and getting teacher feedback. And they got some really powerful feedback on, the main thing here on this slide is that all the teachers understood what was UDL and why should they be implementing it? What was the value of UDL? And then, hopefully, where are they in their own UDL journey? And their readiness was at different levels, but there was either they were ready to go or they wanted to be ready to go. Mostly there was, less people that were on the I'm not ready spectrum. So it was just a really nice model from a district of how they did this UDL initiative. So I'm going to have Linda close that and go back to the slides. And we're just going to one more slide about this group. So because we did the presentation from them, I invited them to do a little video interview with me about their, UDL in their district and kind of a more general discussion. And we were able to have their director of teaching and learning and 2 teachers that were kind of teachers on special assignment as inclusive practices consultants. And they were able to give us some insight to their district. So it's a 9-minute video. We're going to provide it to you to watch at your leisure, and we're not going to play the whole thing today, but we wanted to play the last part. So the last part is, what is their advice to you and other districts on how, what have they learned about initiating UDL? So let's take a quick listen. in closing, what would you recommend other districts, how would they start if they want to get going on their own UDL initiative, and what advice would you give them?
I'll speak briefly and then turn it over to those other two. My main piece of advice would be recognizing the Universal Design for Learning framework as an all-encompassing framework for the learning experiences that you're going to design in your classrooms, how you're going to engage your community and your families, and the professional learning that you're going to design as well. And so since you have this all-encompassing framework at the district level, you need to get your highly capable coordinator in the room, your director of teaching and learning in the room, your special education director, your EL coordinator, your migrant coordinator, because it is a framework that has direct application to all of your student populations. And it's a way to have a cohesive approach to redesigning what we're doing for kids in our classrooms. So that's my sort of rant, I guess, on that question. And then, Terry, Sarah, what do you think about that?
Thank you, Casey.
I think the buy-in from the teachers, knowing the why, knowing the reason for UDL, and understanding the benefits it brings to your classroom and to your students is crucial. At the feedback form that we had teachers fill out after that January 3rd PD day was 100% of the teachers knew the why behind it, and they agreed and strongly agreed that they understood the reason why the district is going in this direction. And I think that's very powerful.
And I would just add to keep the work present and to make it consistent at staff meetings. Obviously, we had the professional development day that was centered around UDL, but at staff meetings, at PLCs, and offering continuing professional learning around UDL. We also publish a bi-weekly UDL newsletter to keep it at the forefront of people's minds. So I would just advise that when you get into this work, it can't be a one and done. It needs to you need to make sure that it's consistent and at the forefront of all that we do.
Oh, thank you guys so much. That is really helpful to hear perspective, and to have all three of you here to give input on your different roles and how it's going. And I really enjoyed talking with you today and experience.
I hope that's okay, Rose, that I cut it off so that we can.
That's it.
Yeah.
Got it all.
So.
So I'm just going to wrap up that slide just by saying, if you want to go back, the first two questions, I kind of tried to summarize some of the main points here, so you could look back and see what are the other kind of main points they made. And it's interesting to listen to them there too for the future. All right, so that brings us to the next slide. So now we'd like you again to pause your recording of us and just think for a minute, how can you leverage district leaders to be UDL coaches? And how can you facilitate UDL collaboration among educators? And if you take time to listen to that whole video, you're going to get some more ideas there as well. But hopefully you can take a few minutes to reflect, write them in the Padlet if you are willing to share out, or again, jot a note to yourself or silent think time. Thanks.
So now we just wanted to share a little bit about the Special Ed Tech Center's reflection and some ways in which we are going forward with setting some goals. So we're thinking about what have we learned at SETC with our work, what has gone well, what can we improve upon, and how is this informing our future planning to serve Washington State around universal design for learning. I wanted to just share that I've been thinking, I talked about relationships being so critical over time, and I've been thinking about how can we also let data lead the way. And when I say data, I mean things like Chelan did with surveys, getting teacher input, but also using the data from the conversations, using the data from the interviews that we do and really listening to people. And then I was thinking, how do we gather statewide data? And just in a partnership meeting last week, I learned that another state agency did a survey of hundreds of teachers and had some key UDL questions. So when we maybe gather for discussion in April, I'll be able to share out some of those results on how teachers are feeling about implementation of UDL in Washington State.
One of the things that I've learned through this is don't assume who's going to be interested. In Freeman, we saw that. In Richland, we saw that. And share it with everyone, but then be patient and take them where they're at. Point out what they're already doing well, and then help them to grow from there. And then be patient and, spread the excitement, but you just realize it could take a while for everybody to get on board. But again, just help them grow from where they are. And then one other thing that I really realized is this is important work that we're doing at the K-12 level, but it's also important at the pre-teacher level. So our college professors and teaching, having them be teaching in this manner and having them be setting the example and teaching how important UDL is.
All right. And my reflections, like Linda, just meeting teams where they're at, and really, even when we're doing consultations now, what do you have available in your district? And just recently we had a gen ed teacher join our discussion, and I had several tools in mind, but there was one tool she was really familiar with and excited about. So we went down that road because we listened to her direction, and we knew we'd have the best chance of success going down a path that was familiar and comfortable for them. And then also just, whenever we're delivering professional development on UDL, we've tried to increase more opportunities to do some hands-on time, if it's a tool, or definitely some reflection and sharing like we're trying to model today, even in a pre-recorded session. And just more time for participants to stop, engage, and reflect on their learning. And then so that just led to a couple goals for myself, making sure, of course, that I provide multiple options for access to professional development, whether we're doing live, which we were going to originally be live, but now we're pre-recorded. So how could we still provide options in that way? Or maybe we're just doing an online live webinar or tutorial, no matter what it is, thinking always what are some multiple options. And finally, thinking about how we can follow up. We mentioned earlier that these things aren't a one and done. I think that's what one of our video interviewers said. So how can we provide coaching and follow-up after we do trainings and or consultations? And our hope today is that you'll be willing to follow up with us in April to do a live webinar and debrief some of these ideas.
So be thinking about how you can make UDL connections. And we're hoping, again, as Rose said, that you join the follow-up discussion where we can be live together. And so you'll see that Zoom link right there that you can register for that session, and we can have a further discussion. In our last reflection here, we just wanted you to think about what resonated with you today. How will this influence your future practice? So if you have any questions, we're hoping that you responded in the Padlet and you shared also questions in the Padlet. We will be looking at that, then looking forward to meeting with you again in April. We have our resources here. We'll let you explore those. And we just want to thank you for viewing this session and encourage you to reach out to the three of us to begin to collaborate.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.